Hello everyone and welcome to the first part of the exercise video of lesson 2. This first part isn't necessarily based on the first part of the lecture that I just posted. All of the exercise videos are based on the entire lecture videos combined. It was just too long to put it all in one video, but every video of the exercise videos is about 10 hours long, compressed into 2 hours. So 5 parts means 50 hours compressed into 10 hours. I can't post a 10-hour video on YouTube, so it will be just 2-hour long video in 5 parts. The exercises are about painting values on different objects in different light situations and different base values. So we're gonna tackle different light types, direction, intensity, position, base values, and different combination of shapes and objects. I'm not gonna talk about materials or color just yet. This is purely about values for now. These examples are gonna be divided into 5 categories: basic shapes, complex basic shapes, rocks, toys, and organic shapes including statues, fabric, and animals. So for this first video, we're gonna do 5 different basic shape examples. And for each example, I'm gonna change the direction of the light, its intensity, shape, position, and the object basic values. So in this video, we have 5 different examples with 4 variations each, 20 examples in total. So 5 videos with 100 examples. There is tons more in the lecture video, so hopefully you will be covered for examples in lesson 2. So with that said, let's start with the first example. But before we dive in, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment down below. So we're gonna start very easy and ramp up the difficulty as we go on. In the lecture video and lesson 1, we took very basic shapes like boxes, cylinders, cones, and geospheres and painted the values for them in different lighting position and situation. Here we're gonna build up on that and start combining the different basic shapes together. And as we move along, these shapes will get more and more complicated. And I'm gonna start very slow and explain in details everything I do, and we will go faster as we move along. So the first few examples, I will explain everything and every step I'm doing. We're gonna start with the first example with these 2 boxes on top of each other and on an angle. The base values for these boxes are toward the gray area, around a value of 4 to 5. So without any light source, these boxes will be light gray. Keep that in mind for later. Base values are very important in deciding how to paint your values. We discussed the base values in lesson 1 and how light would increase these values and the absence of it would decrease them down to the dark shadows. So if you need to check lesson 1 and the 2 exercise videos on it, please do. The light in this first variation is coming from the top right side. If you look to the left of the canvas, you will see that the value scale showing that we are basically using the whole scale here for this scene. Since the boxes are light gray and the surrounding area of the environment is dark gray. Next to the value scale, we have 3 views based on the main perspective view on the right. These views are the front view, the left view, and the top view of these boxes. Here you can pinpoint exactly where the light is. So it's to the top right, but to the front, not to the back. And it's on an angle, looking downward toward the boxes. Before we start painting, let's look at the surface normal of this object. The surface normal is another thing we talked about in lesson 1 and the lecture video for this lesson, but no harm in repeating it. Surface normal is simply where your surface is looking at. So if you are facing that surface, you will see the arrow going right toward you. So these are the surface normal for these 2 boxes. This will affect the angle of the light and how it hits the boxes. That's why it's very important to know the direction of the light source. If the light source was to the back, not to the front, these 2 boxes will be mostly in shadows. So next we see the light ray coming from the light source and toward the surface normal. Here you can see the different angles the light is hitting the boxes. The smaller the angle is, the lighter the surface will be. An angle of 0 is not pure white, but it's the lightest gray the box can be. Also, it depends on the intensity of the light source. A powerful light source can turn even black objects into pure white. But for the example here, the lightest of these boxes can get up to a value of 2. And the darkest will be around 6 or 7. So a 0 angle is a value of 2, and a 90-degree angle is more of a 6 or 7. For the ground, it's a dark gray, so the lightest part of it will be around 5 or 4, and the darkest will go all the way to 8 or 9. With that said, let's map out the values on these boxes based on these angles. As you can see, the lightest surface is the closest surface facing the light source. Now, you would think that it's the top of the small box, but due to the position of the light being low, the side surface angle is less than the top surface. So the side surface is the lightest part at 2, and the top surface of the top box is at 3. Now the top of the bottom box is lower than the top box, which means the angle will be less than the one on the top, but not as small as the side surface yet. So it becomes a value of 2.5. Somewhere in between the two values, there will be the top of the bottom box. But not all of it will be the same value. Remember, the light decays as it moves on. Even though the far side of the surface is a part of it, light decay as it moves further away. Now in sunlight that won't happen, but a small light source like this one, decay would happen even in small spaces. So the far side of the top surface of the bottom box will be at 3 instead of 2.5. Also, not all of it is 3, some of it is blocked by the box itself, resulting in a small cast shadow showing on the top surface and underneath that little lip of the top box, casting a bit of a shadow on the lower box as well. Now it might not seem like the position of the light is high enough, but in reality it's a bit higher, but I can't show it outside the canvas. So think of it as a bit higher, but not too high that it changes the value of the top surface. Just enough to cast a little shadow on the other side. The other corner of the far side is where the top box blocks the light from reaching it. So this becomes a cast shadow, which is around a value of 6. Now, why isn't it a value of 8 or 9? Because the box is not the ground. The ground is a dark gray as a base value. So the value can reach 8 or 9, but the light gray box can go at most to the dark midtones of 6 or 7. The side of the lower box is almost at 70 degrees, which makes it around a mid value of 4, while the other side is facing away from the light source, so it's way bigger than 90 degrees, which automatically puts it in the shadows at a value of 6 or 7. And the same for the top box. But even though both values are in the shadows, the top box will have a small reflected light from the bottom box top, while the lower box will have some reflected light from the ground. Finally, the ground will be at the lightest at 4 or 5 from the right side, but where the boxes blocks the light, it will be at a cast shadow of a value of 8 or 9, since the base value of the ground is a dark midtone as we said. All these calculations need to happen before you do any brush strokes on the painting. Slowing down and doing good preparation pre-painting would make things much easier and results in way less mistakes. But eventually you will get better at this, and most of these will be done mentally as you paint. Just don't worry about speed just yet. If you take 10 minutes to do all this before you start the painting, it will save you hours of corrections afterward if you rushed through it. Okay, now we are ready to paint the values. And normally I would just start painting right away, but here I want to show you what the values look like from the other views before I start painting. This way you will first understand where the light is hitting on all sides before I paint it in perspective. This way you will understand the scene in 3D instead of 2D. So starting with the front side, we are seeing the same faces we see in our perspective. And as we just explained, the top right surface will be the lightest at a value of 2. The bottom will be at a value of 4. The side of the two boxes will be in the shadow at a value of 6. Also don't forget the little lip shadow the top box leaves on the bottom due to the light position and the box extending out of the limit of the lower box. Here I'm doing a little diagram showing that from the light source, light decays toward the end of the scene. So even if it starts at 0, by the time it reaches the other side it will be about 4. While on the vertical side it will go all the way to 3 since it's shorter distance to the floor than to the other side. So with that said, the top right side of the box gets even lighter while the bottom gets a bit darker. But it's not crazy different like in huge values, just in fractions. Big enough to show the difference but smaller than a shift in value. And the same for the lower box. The ground may reflect darker shadows if it's dark or brighter reflections if it's light. Okay, that's enough for the front view, let's do the top view. Now from the top view, the top surface isn't as bright as the side one. As we said before, it's about 3. But it also shows the decay of the light. So the edge closest to the light gets brighter and the one behind gets slightly dimmer. As for the bottom surface, from one side it's even brighter than the top due to the lower angle of its surface. The other side have a bit of a cast shadow and the top left is in complete shadow. In the top view we also see the ground, so let's add a light mid-tone from the light source to the other side. And now we delete the shadow blocked by the boxes to make a cast shadow. It looks really cool when you delete the shadows. You can literally feel the boxes is blocking the light in this little sketch. Also, the shadows isn't just one block. These are two boxes with the top box being smaller, so the shadow will be smaller on the top part, but the whole thing will extend beyond the canvas, since the light source is a bit in a steep angle. So think of it as a shadow in the golden hour before sunset. Alright, for the left side, here we have the other side of the boxes that we can only see half of it in the perspective view. So the right face in the left side view is the left face in the perspective view. So these faces are basically all in shadows. But we differentiate between them by the reflected light hitting the back side of the wall and into the boxes. So the far side of the boxes will be slightly more lit due to the reflected light. Considering that the scene is without an ambient light and just complete darkness from all around without any atmosphere, the left side will be a bit lighter. Otherwise, the ambient light would lighten up all the four sides of the boxes to the value of 4 or 5. And here you can see the light from the other side hitting the walls and reflecting back into the boxes, resulting in a small hint of a lighter tone on the left side of the boxes. Alright, with all that preparation, we are 100% ready to paint the scene in 3D. So I start with adding the ambient occlusion underneath the boxes just to separate them from each other and from the ground. Then I start painting the values from the brightest to the darkest. Now this isn't the only way to do it, as you're gonna see with more examples. I'm gonna start painting in many different ways. So don't take one way as a rule, you can start painting any way you are comfortable with. Now I'm adding a bit of a light decay on the brightest surface, going from probably 1.5 value on the top right to 2.5 in the bottom left of the surface. Take your time with it and enjoy the process. As long as you don't have a deadline, no need to rush this at all. After I'm done with the first surface, I go to the 2.5 value underneath it, which is the top side of the lower box, still separating it from the top box with an ambient occlusion underneath it. After that, I paint the mid-tone values of the lower box right side and the shadows on both boxes left side. Now I'm adding the cast shadow from the top box on the lower one, both on the top surface and the right side surface. If you want to know more about how to cast a shadow, watch the exercise videos on lesson 1. I added a lot of examples on that in a very detailed way. Okay, so now that I have all the values in, I can go around and start making sure the values are different between the surfaces. If a surface needs to be lighter, we add another light layer, and if it needs to go darker, we add another dark layer. Also, I'm adding variety of values within the same surface, going a quarter or half value up or down within, depending on the direction of the light. Here is a very important trick, adding a bevel to the boxes. See, in nature there are no sharp edges, it's all beveled in certain degrees. So on the top side of the boxes, the brightest surface isn't the right side of the box, it's the beveled edge on top of that surface. The small bright line will separate your surfaces from each other and add a very nice finishing touch to the box itself. The same can be applied to the other surfaces, but the brightness varies depending on the surface direction itself. So the bottom box have the same bevel, but the edge isn't as bright as the top box. But it looks like it's shiny due to the darker tone around it. Things can look darker if the surrounding is bright, and things can look brighter if the surrounding is dark. A very important rule that will occur a lot in these videos. Here I'm darkening the shadow surfaces even more to separate it from the cast shadow on the top of the bottom box. See, the bottom box is getting more reflected light from the sky and the light hitting the wall in the background, unlike the left side of the boxes. Now I move on to the ground. The brightest part of the ground won't be as bright as the boxes since it's a mid value tone of 5. Even when I go a bit higher, I lower the tone using Ctrl U and lowering the lightness. After that, I cut out the cast shadow by the two boxes of the floor, while remembering that the top box will cast a smaller shadow above the other box. Now we talked about the sharpness and blurriness of the shadow in the previous lesson, The smaller and higher intensity the light is, the sharper the shadow will be. The bigger the light and the lower the intensity of it, the blurrier the shadow will be. Now I'm adding darker value to the cast shadow to separate it from the boxes. And maybe even lightening the box's shadow a little bit to separate it from the cast shadow. I also removed the outline layer and painted in the crisper edges instead. It's very important to keep your edges readable when you need it. It has to do with the lost and found edges. You should have the control on when your edges blend with the background and when they are separated from it. And you can do that by controlling the values. Even a slightly lower or higher value would make all the difference. And you can see it right here. I first darkened the wall behind the box, but I saw that it's getting closer to the box value. So instead I lowered the value of the wall and the box popped out right away. Look at this before and after. It feels like I darkened the box itself, but I didn't even touch it. I only lightened the background behind it and the shadow side of the box got suddenly darker. Cause always remember, you don't need to darken the surface to make it look dark. You can do the same by just lighting the surrounding, and vice versa with lighting things up. I'm adding more details like some grunge underneath the lower box, just as an added detail. We will move faster than this as we move forward, but for the first example I kinda need to explain everything so you don't get lost the minute you start. Now I'm adding reflected light, both from the floor toward the lower box and from the lower box top surface toward the shadow side of the top box. Reflected light is light bouncing from the lighter surface toward the darker one. So if the floor was black, there won't be any reflected light to the light box, but there will be darker values carrying to the light box and vice versa. And also the same would be with colors. If the floor was red, it would bleed into the boxes as well. But we will talk about colors in the first chapter. We're gonna focus on values for the entirety of the first chapter of the second book. Now I'm just going around the painting and taking the artistic license, adding details and making sure that the scene reads better all around. Now look at the left side of the boxes, both the top and the bottom. These two values surprisingly are the same. You can obviously see that the top is darker and the bottom is lighter, but trust me, both are the same value. The only reason you see it like this is the bottom value is surrounded by dark cast shadow and the top value is surrounded by a light background wall. So they look different even though they are equal in value. Use that to your advantage. Just like a reflected light brighten up the surface, darker surrounding will add some darker values to the surface closest to it because it's reflected in by the object. So if you have an object that is very reflective, it will be even darker. So the bottom of the left side of the bottom box will be darker due to the surrounding cast shadow. Now adding the final details here and there. And it's done. And here it is, the first variation of the first example out of 100 to come. It looks beautiful. Even if I hide the light source, you can still tell where it is just by looking at the values of the two boxes. That's why it's very important to understand your scene from all sides before committing to painting the values. I hope this is as detailed as possible as a painting example, because I tried to look for something like this online, but artists seem to move very fast when doing values. They explain the general idea of the values rather than what they are actually doing step by step. This kinda drove me crazy when I was starting up, so I felt like I needed to do this for my own younger self, whoever is going to watch this afterward. Although I hope it's not too boring for you to watch. And I hope you feel that you can follow along without being lost halfway there. Alright, on to the next example. Same example but with a different lighting situation. Here we have a small omni light emitting a small sphere of light to the left side of the boxes. We can see the same normal surface we had in the previous example since they are the same boxes. And here are the light rays emitting from all sides around the light source. The light ray angles now change toward the new light source and mostly hitting the left side of the boxes. So the values will now follow the same process, but in this example the light source is very small and thus the decaying of the light will be faster even on the same surface. So if you look at the top box left side, the corner of it will probably be at a value of 2, which is the brightest, but as the box turns away, the light decay as it moves toward the top right corner to reach a value of 4 or 5. Same story with the lower box, but the other way up. Not only that, but everything that isn't facing the light will go directly to the dark shadows, since the light isn't big enough to bounce all over the place, adding the ambient light. One last thing to notice is that the shadow of the box will start from the bottom of the lower box, but then it will expand as it goes backward. This is because the light source is in the middle space of the box, so the shadow will expand both ways as it goes backward. The smaller the light source is, the bigger the cast shadow will be, and the bigger the light source is, the narrower the cast shadow will be. And we will see examples on both later on. With that, let's start first with the other views to understand how the light is hitting the boxes. In the front view, we see that the two left sides are bright, starting from the adjacent corner closer to the light source, and it decays bit by bit toward the far corner. As for the right side of the boxes, this will be in the shadow, but you can still tell that there are a faint light tone closer to the light than the other side. The sphere of light surrounding the light source have that effect even on the shadows. In the top view, the light isn't high enough to shine on the top surface of the top box, as you can see from the front view. So the top box will be in shadows while the lower box have a slanted angle, resulting in a high mid-tone value of 4. As for the ground, we have a spherical light area emitting from the light source being blocked by the two boxes from both sides. That's what I was talking about, that the shadow expands on both sides of the boxes since the light source is smaller than the box itself. You can connect the two shadows edges directly to the light spot and you will see where the cast shadow is. Now even though the top box is smaller, it won't show up in the shadows since the light source is in the middle of the boxes, so the shadow will go way longer to the right. As for the left view, the right side of this view is the bright side, while the left side is the other side of the boxes that we don't see in the 3D perspective. Here the top box left side is facing a little bit of the light source, so it's not as dark as the one below it, but not as bright as the other side of the same box. With that, let's paint the main perspective. Keeping the other views to the side, I have now all the information I need to paint the value, starting from the highest value to the left side of the boxes. It will be a light surface closer to the source and mid-tones as it moves away. The rest of the boxes will be in shadow except the front of the top side of the lower box. Always try to build up your tones layer by layer. Brighten things up and darken others as you move along. Now I'm adding the ground value, lighter of course underneath the light source and darker as it moves away from it. Also adding the cast shadow of the boxes as we said, expanding toward the back. I'm dimming back the ground toward the midtones since the ground is darker than the boxes, only keeping the lightest value directly underneath the light. It's always nice to paint really faint differences in the same surface to give it the illusion of depth. If all sides show the same value, it will be a bit flat. When things move in or out or away or close, the value should reflect that movement in very minor value changes. As I darken the shadow on the side, the lighter parts get brighter even without touching them. It's a great illusion to have, like we saw with the Michelangelo's painting, where everything is dark except his focus point. It makes it look like there is an actual light source in the scene, even though his whites aren't even that bright. Now I remove the outline layer to paint in instead some real edges. Outlines can be kept in case of the stylized painting, but since we are going with the realism here, there are no actual sharp outlines in nature. Only beveled edges that catches more of the highlight depending on the direction of the light source. The final stage is where I go around the painting trying to clear up my edges, by darkening areas behind the light edges to make it lighter or lightening up the background to make my dark edges darker. Just giving it an overall better read, that's all. And here it is, completely different values from the previous one. By changing the light direction, type, intensity, and distance, we get a whole new set of values, tones, and feel to the painting. Now let's move the light once more and see what we get. In this example, not only I moved the light source, but also changed the basic values of both boxes. The top box is in now dark tones and the lower box is in light tone. The surface normal are the same as before. The light rays now hit from the top left corner, adding a brighter values to the left back side of the boxes. The value resulting from that are completely different than before. The top box lightest side will be around 7 and the darkest will be around 9. While the lower box going to have the lightest at 1.5 and the darkest at 5 due to their basic values. So let's start painting the other views first. From the front, the left side is brighter than the right side, but even the brightest side of the top box is still darker than the darkest side of the lower box. On the top side we see that the light is not only to the left, but it's also to the back of the boxes, so the back side will be brighter as well. The top of the lower box is at an angle with the light source, so it's the closest angle to 0 degree, making it the brightest of all the sides. As for the background, boxes block the light from the right bottom corner based on their position. The higher the light is, the shorter the shadows will be, and vice versa. From the left side we have the bottom box lit from both sides with a lighter tone due to the reflected light from the background wall. As for the top box, the left side is completely facing the light source, while the right side is turning away. Okay, now let's paint the main scene. First I add the basic values to the box. It's always a good starting point so you don't go over the light or dark values. Now I start adding the dark side of the white box, making sure it doesn't go over the value of 5, except where it is closer to the cast shadow on the ground. The top box is almost black on the shadow side, but the other sides will have a dark mid-tone of a value of 6 or 7. Except the part where it gets hit by the reflected light from the lightest part of the lower box, shining a little triangle on the bottom of the top box. Now depending on how much reflective the boxes are, the reflected light can be a mirrored triangle from the lower box or a blurry lower value in the case of a non-reflective material, but in both cases the values has to show up. The little triangle on the lower box top right side will be darker than the lower side due to the black box casting a shadow there and reflecting some of the dark tones on it. Dark tones also reflect on other surfaces, especially the lighter one. Now I'm adding some bevel edges to both boxes, giving it a touch of realism. The edges on the top box can go up to a value of 6, and they will look bright enough for such a dark value. As for the lower box, I'm using pure white with a bit of a 50% opacity as I'm painting it, to add a white edge where the light mostly hit. Adding variety of tones inside the same face always gives the scene a bit more realistic look. Because as I mentioned on the lecture lesson, artificial lights decay even in small distances, and that should reflect on your painting. Now I'm adding some of the lighter tones on the background, while trying to stay darker than the lower white box since the background is always in a gray midtones. Now I cut the cast shadow out of it. The top box will look a bit thinner in the cast shadow, since it's rotated a little bit and the size will be smaller than the lower box. And now this is where I move around the canvas and make sure the edges read a little better by darkening the background around the bright edges of the boxes and lightening it around the other. Also adding the cast shadow and the ambient occlusion underneath the boxes. The back wall of the background will always be a bit darker than the ground due to the angle of the normal surface compared to the light source. But even when I try to lighten it, I make sure it's not affecting the balance with the boxes too much. So when that happens, I darken it a little bit once more. There is a little reflected light from the bottom side of the lower box due to the light passing near it before the cast shadow starts darkening the rest of it. So the lower box right side is a mix of a darker shadow on the right and bright midtones on the left. Now adding the final touches around the whole scene and finishing up the painting. And we are done. On to the final light position for the first example. In this example we have two light sources. A prime light from the top right side and a faint rim light from the left side. This is how most concept artists light their characters or scenes, adding another light source to enhance the edges of their subject and giving it a more theatrical look. So the prime light will hit the right side of the boxes and the rim light will hit the left side with a less intensity. The boxes in this example are both gray with a basic value of 5. Here are the surface normal of the boxes. And here are the light rays from the prime light hitting mostly the right side, and in red we have the rim light rays hitting the left side of the boxes. The values will vary everywhere. Even with the rim light, the values has to be lighter on the right side no matter what, since the light source on the right is much brighter. But in this situation, what was in the shadows before is still in the shadow but with a brighter tint, starting with the closest edges to the rim light and dimming out as they go away from it. For example, the bottom box left side was a value of 6, but there is a value of 2 coming from the left side, lowering the side value of it from 6 to 4, starting from the closest edges to the light and going all the way to 6 as it go away from it. All these calculations aren't set in stone. These are all educated guesses based on the position and intensity of the light source. So let's start with the front view. When you paint a scene with two lights, start with the prime light till you finish it, and then add the effect of the secondary light. This way you won't get confused as you paint. There is also a cast shadow of the top box on the bottom box, like the one we did before, but this one is a bit longer due to the position of the light. Now I'm adding a faint lighter tone on the shadow part of the boxes due to the rim light. There will be more light on the bottom box due to it being a bit closer to the light source than the one above it. If you get confused, you can always turn on the value chart layer and remember how you calculated your values before. On the top view, we have the top side of the boxes being lit from the primary light and the rim light from the right and the left. The rim light isn't high enough to hit the top box left side, but it's high enough to hit the lower box. But even though it hits the lower box, there is a cast shadow happening due to the light hitting the side of the top box. So it will be in shadows, but with a lighter value due to the rim light. And here is the cast shadow on the ground as well, with a lighter blurry ending due to the rim light position. On the left side, the lower box will have a lighter mid-tone, going darker as it goes away from the rim light. For the top box, both sides are also on the shadow, and both have gradual lighter tone on the corner in between. Now let's paint the scene starting with the prime light values first. Sometimes I start with the lightest values and go all the way to the dark ones, and sometimes it's the other way around. There is no right or wrong way to how to start, as long as you follow the right values. And here is the cast shadow of the top box. In the first example we had a smaller cast shadow because the light source was a bit more toward us. This time the light source is in the middle, so the edge of the top box cast shadow a bit longer all the way to the edge. You can see that the left side of the boxes are both in the shadows, but the lower one is a bit brighter due to it being closer to the rim light. I like to add the values to the ground as soon as possible to frame my object and make sure I don't go overboard with the light and dark tones. Because as we said earlier, lighter background will darken your values and dark background will lighten your values. So make sure you don't leave the background till the end, otherwise you will have to redo all the values afterward. The cast shadow does start dark at the edge of the boxes, but fades away as it goes near the rim light source. In the lecture I said that no matter how bright a reflected light is, it will never be lighter than the edge in the actual light. The lower box left edge here seems to look lighter than it should, but in this case it's not a reflected light, it's an actual light source. So the rules here are a bit different. Now I remove the outline and redrew my edges in values instead, adding dark ambient inclusion on the bottom and light beveled edges on the top. I zoom out from time to time to look at the whole scene. Zooming in will make you lose sight of the whole scene values and things will go wrong very fast from there. I'm adding a little bit of a lighter value on the top box right side from the reflected light hitting the lower box top side. And now I'm going over all the scene, enhancing edge read of the boxes in relation to the background. Finally, I'm adding a fade gradation on the left side of the boxes, making sure you can tell that the closest you get to the rim light, the brighter it will be in comparison to the other side. And it's done. And here are all the 4 variations of the light for the first example, side by side. Changing light sources, light position, light direction, and basic values will completely change the values of your painting and the mood of it. Alright, those were fun, but a bit simple. Let's crank up the difficulty a little bit and add another object to the scene. 3 objects instead of 2. A box, a cone, and a cylinder. As you can tell, I'm building up the complexity bit by bit, till we finally get to paint a full character or landscape in different lighting positions. Hopefully you will follow up by doing these exercises yourself, as well as setting your own difficulty and pace as you go along. Alright, let's see. In the second set of example, we have a combination of a box and a cone with a cylinder connecting the two together. For the first light variation, we have the light as a big overhead rectangle shining direct light on top of the whole set. Let's first look at the surface number of the objects. Here we don't have straight faces only like we have before. We have also round surfaces. These surfaces act like a tiny rectangles or polygons pointing at different directions. So we're gonna have lots of gradual values on these surfaces. As for the light, it's a vertical light emitter, so all the angles of the light will hit on the top side of the objects. So the values will be light on the top and get darker and darker as they move down because of the light decay. The values will follow this logic as well and have the lightest values on the top of the box and the top of the cone and the top side of the cylinder. Now since this is an artificial light, it will decay as it reaches the ground. So the box side will start at 4 and end up at 5 at the bottom. But notice that the left corner of the box is closer to the center of the light than its right corner, so the light will decay as well horizontally from 4 to 6 as it moves away from the light, same as vertically. As for the cylinder, the values will gradually go from the top at 2 all the way to the bottom at 6, except for the little part in the bottom where the light will reflect back from the ground and the cone and the box and hit it back to increase its value from 6 to 5. As for the cone, the light will hit all of its sides equally, but vertically the angles are all the same, but the light decay isn't, so it will get slightly darker as it moves down. The final thing to notice is the cast shadow of the cylinder. It will cast a shadow vertically toward the ground since the light is above it, so there will be a cast shadow on the box and the cone. On the box it will be straight down, and on the cone it will move in with the surface of the cone on an angle and continue all the way to the ground. Alright, enough talking about it and let's start painting instead. In the front view we see the light cone going from 2 on the top to 3 or 4 at the bottom. The cylinder have a very lit top, dark middle and a reflected light from the bottom. The box will have a mid-tone value about 4 from the top all the way to 5 at the bottom. And finally the cast shadow from the cylinder on the top of the other objects is showing as well. In the top view we will see all the bright surfaces hit directly by the light. I represent the light source here with a hollow rectangle, so you can see what I'm painting on the object, but in reality it's fully lit. Since this is the top view, you can't see any cast shadows here since all of them are directly underneath the object. For the left side we have a similar situation to the front, since the light is from the top, so all around the objects the values will be mostly the same, light values from the top and mid-tones in the bottom. Okay, let's start painting the main scene now by adding the values to the box. Lighter top and mid-tone sides. You can always reshift your values diagram in case you forgot. Now I'm adding the cast shadow to the cylinder and then moving on to the cylinder itself. Lighter top and gradually getting darker as you move down. The absolute bottom will have reflected light from other objects and the ground back to the cylinder. The bottom face of the cylinder is dark since the light is at 90-degree angle with it, but due to the reflected light it goes a bit lighter than that. Now we can paint the cone, lit all around with the gradual decay from the top to the bottom. The cast shadow on the cone from the cylinder doesn't go straight down as we said, cause the cone doesn't have a straight down edge, it's on an angle, and so would the cast shadow. The basic values are initially done, but here where we add a variety to each surface to make it more real, instead of a Photoshop artificial painting. We do that by adding a variety in values on each edge, depending on the direction and position of the light. The cast shadow of the cylinder continue on the ground, connecting the cast shadow in front of the cone, on the cone itself, the ground behind the cone, and finally on the box. You can see that the cast shadow is darker on the floor than on the box, because the floor is a dark mid-tone of a value of 5 to 6, while the box is lighter mid-tone surface of a value of 4 to 5. Now I remove the outline and work on the edges. Without the outline, all the edges merge together, cause you won't be paying much attention to them with the outline on top, so you need to separate them again by adding beveled edges, catching the highlight on top and dark ambient occlusion shadow from the bottom. As for the midtone edges, you can darken the foreground and lighten the background, or darken the front object and lighten the back object till you have a clear separation of edges in between the two objects. You can always hide and unhide the outline layer to know exactly where the edge is. Keep enhancing it till you finally no longer need the outline layer. You can see how the objects feel like they blend with the floor until I add the ambient occlusion at the bottom, and suddenly they feel like they are actually sitting on the ground instead of being fused with it. Now I go around the painting, separating the values even more by increasing the brightness of the top values. Also the same treatment for the bottom of the objects by differentiating the values in between them and the ground. A brighter value behind the box completely separated from the background and made that little connection in the middle much clearer to read. Finally, I darkened the scene around the objects to add more contrast to the focal point. And it's done, around 25 minutes in total. Take your time and enjoy the process. On to the next one. In this option I'm mimicking the Rembrandt painting we saw in the lecture video by hiding a tiny light source behind the object. We can't see the light itself, but we can see its effect. Here we can see a faint circle showing where the light is, and you can pinpoint its location by looking at the other views. We have the surface normal and the light rays shining from behind the cone and hitting the subjects on different locations. The value chart will be mostly dark here, a very low key painting overall, cause the light source is only hitting the left side of the box, a smudge underneath the right side of the cylinder and almost none of the cone except reflected light from the box. The shadow for the cylinder this time gonna go upward and to the right, following the direction of the spot. Okay, let's start with the front view. Here we have a dark cone cause the light is on the other side, a dark cylinder except the bottom cause again it doesn't see the light from this side, a dark right side of the box and a light left side reflecting the light in front of it. Also notice that the values are brighter the closer they are to the light source. Finally, the cast shadow of the cylinder is on the top corner of the box. From the top view, the box is all in the dark value, since the light is below it. The cone side facing the light is bright and gradually goes into the dark. Same for the cylinder. We can also see the effect of the light on the floor, shining all around the spot, but being blocked by the cone and the box. The cylinder, as we said, doesn't show any cast shadow on the floor because it's above the light, while the box and the cone are going from below it to above it. On the left side here we can see the light, and everywhere facing this light will be bright, and it decays from there toward the darkness. Now for the main painting. Since most of this is in dark, I will start with the dark base value and then subtract the light value from it. As we said, the box left side is facing the light, so it will be lighter from the nearest edge to the light and dark mid-tone on the other side. The cylinder will be dark all over except the bottom, and the cone will be all dark except the reflected light. The box right side and the top will be all in dark as well. We add the cast shadow of the cylinder on the top corner of the box and blend the values a bit more to gradually change from left to right. We add a bit of reflected light on the bottom of the cylinder and darken the middle part a little bit more because it's on the complete opposite of the light source. Now I'm adding some reflected light on the right of the cone and some darker tones for the ambient occlusion around the cylinder. I decided to separate the box bottom right from the top by darkening the bottom side more and adding a bit of an ambient light on the top side of the box. If you make both sides the same value, it will look like a 2D drawing. It will be a bit confusing to look at. With all that done, now we can add the values to the background and the cast shadow of the objects. Use the light and the shadow of the background to enhance the read of your edges. You can make some edges found and some lost with the background. We're gonna talk more about the edges in the later parts of the lecture video. Here I'm adding a lighter value to the wall in the background and also separating the value of the wall from the dark cone in the front. Same thing with the little corridor in between the cone and the box. Now with all the values painted down, I can remove the outline and start enhancing the edges of the objects like we did before. It's always good to remove all the fuzziness around the edges and committing to the clean, beveled edges all around. Now I'm adding some reflected light and ambient occlusion here and there to separate the values a bit more. Mainly going around the painting and enhancing the quality of the edges and the faces by adding a variety of values inside the surface within the same range of values. So if we have a surface with a value of 5, I can go from 4.5 all the way to 5.5 inside the same surface depending on the position of the light. Adding the final touches to the painting. And here it is, the second iteration of this set is done. Let's check out the third iteration. Here is where we not only change the direction and the type of light, but also the basic values of the object. Notice how I'm not changing the materials yet, just the basic values. Later we will do this with different reflectivity, refractivity and glossiness. It will be even more complicated than this. But we will do that later. But for now let's check this one out. So here we have the light coming from the spotlight on the top right side from the foreground shining toward the background. The light rays will interact with the surface normal accordingly, resulting in different values and cast shadow direction. Here we see the values of the object. The box basic value is 5, so it's a gray box. The cone is 3, so it's a white cone, and the cylinder basic value is 8, so it's a black cylinder. So the values will vary even in a direct light. The front face of the box is at 4, top is at 6, and 8 in the shadow. The cylinder middle section will be at the brightest, which is a value of 7, and it goes all the way to 9 or 10 in the shadows. The cone starts at 1 on the top part and goes all the way toward the background at 4. Of course, we have the cast shadow of the whole thing at 8. No matter what basic value for the objects, because the cast shadow is sitting on a gray object, which is the floor, so its values are controlled by its basic value, not the basic value of the objects on it. Alright, let's paint the front side. The front side will be the brightest, since it's where the light hits. The cone will be the lightest from 1 all the way to 4, so the cone darkest value will be the lightest value of the box, and the darkest value of the box will be the lightest value of the cylinder, and so on. Also notice that the shadow of the cylinder on the box and the cone is on a diagonal this time, due to the direction of the light source. From the top we have the light values closer to the light position, and the back side of the cone and the cylinder will be in the dark tones. The top of the box will be in the mid-tones, but the closer edge will be lighter than the back edge. The ground will also reflect the light source direction with the objects blocking the light behind them. This time the cylinder casts shadow on the ground, following the direction of the light as well. On the left side, this is where the dark side of the object is. We have dark cone, dark cylinder, and a dark box, because they are all opposite the light source. Here we can see the cast shadow of the cylinder on the box and also on the cone. We can see a faint light edge on the right side of the cone showing the direction of the light. Okay, let's paint the main scene. I start by adding the basic value to the 3 objects to make it easier for me to get the values right. So a light cone, a gray box, and a dark cylinder. Now we add the shadow values to the box, the cylinder, and the cone. Now adding the highlights for all 3 objects. To add the cast shadow, I start by adding the light value for the ground and then subtract the cast shadow out of it. Here we can calculate the shadow precisely like we did with the lesson 1, but for the time's sake I can simply eyeball it by mentally adding the lines from the light source to the edges of the objects to know where they will hit the ground at. Now that I have all the values done, I start varying the values within the same space. So I start with the 10 values first, then go incremental. In half values, then in quarter of a value, and so on. Simply fine-tuning my values. When I'm done with that, I remove the outline and enhance the edges with beveled highlight edges and dark ambient occlusion ones. In the final stage, I go around the painting, enhancing the edges more by separating the values between the object and the background. Whenever I want them to blend with the background, I make the values closer, and whenever I want to separate them, I make the values far apart, more contrasted. And this is it, the third iteration of the second set is done. On to the final option in the second set. Here we have two different light types, a primary spotlight from the top right in the midground and an omni rim light on the left side, a traditional concept art setting. As always, we start by seeing the surface normal of the object first, then the light rays from both light sources. Then we do the value chart. The primary light values are simple. We did this many times before. The objects are gray, so the values will go from 2 to 6. But from the left side, whenever the surface is in the shadow, it will start lighting up closer to the secondary light source. So the cylinder bottom should be at 6, but due to it facing the other side, it will be about 4. Same with the cone. The darkest part should be the furthest away from the primary light source, but in this situation it will be more in the middle back, while the absolute back is lighter due to the second light source. This is not reflected light, as I said before, it's an actual light, so its value will be higher than a reflected light. Okay, let's paint the other views first. The front view is in the light, so the right side of it will be bright, and the left side will have a rim light effect. Less bright than the right side, but not in total darkness. Also, the cast shadow here is tricky. The light is hitting the corner of the box, casting a shadow into the cylinder. And the same thing with the cone, casting its shadow on the other part of the cylinder. The cylinder should be casting a shadow as well, but is fading away due to it getting hit by the other light source. From the top view, it's mostly in the light, except for the cast shadow of the box and the cone. The cast shadow won't be straight on a curved surface, it curves along with the surface as you see it here. The cast shadow on the floor is to the left side of the object, due to the position of the light, of course, and it will be darker closer to the object and will fade away as it gets closer to the other light source. From the left side, we can see the position of the other light source. This should be all in the shadows, but the shadows are a bit brighter due to the second light source. Alright, into the main painting. I start with the box, adding the light values in the front and the darker one to the back. Also adding the cast shadow of the corner of the box and the whole side into the cylinder. The light position here doesn't help you understand the shadow, but if you look at the top side and the other views, you will understand it a bit better. That's why it's good to do these small thumbnails for your scene, so you can understand how things look in 3D all around it. Now I'm moving on to the cone. The right is 100% to the middle of the right side, so the shadow will start at the absolute middle of the cone, but instead of going all the way dark to the back, it will start getting lighter as it faces the second light source. We have another cast shadow for the edge of the cone toward the cylinder. Again, if you want to understand it, look at the top view. This is not the cast shadow of the top of the cone, but the actual edge of the cone itself. I'm adding the cast shadow on the floor, completely going straight left due to the light being straight right of the object. To make the cast shadow darker, I simply lighten the ground floor around it. I need to separate the intensity of the two light sources, and I do that by lightening up the right side and keeping the left side at a high mid-tone value. This way you will see clearly the difference between the two light intensities. Later we will have two exact light sources from two sides, and it will be a bit tricky getting the same values while painting the shadows in the middle of the two light sources. Time to remove the outline and paint over it with the corresponding values in highlights and ambient occlusion. It's time to separate the edges now, so I go all around the painting and start adding gradation inside the surfaces and separate the value outside it, between it and the background. I felt it was a bit grayish overall, so I added a darker tone in certain places to make my piece more contrasted and to read a little bit better. And here it is, the final variation is done. And these are all the 4 variations side by side. So this was a bit more complex than the 2 boxes, wasn't it? So how about we go up a level? So instead of 3 objects, let's go up to 5 objects. We're gonna throw in a rectangular box, a hexagon cylinder, a geosphere like we did in the lecture video, a cone, and a normal sphere. This is gonna be a tricky set to do, I can tell you that right now. To make it even harder, the position of the sphere will be on the top edge of the hexagon and the cone will be on the top of the box. So we have a long way to get to our full character, so let's dive in with the first light iteration of the third set example. In the first one we have a rectangular light source from the top right corner toward the foreground. The surface number for the objects in the scene are as you can see here. It goes each and every way. So there will be lots of values spread around. Here are the light rays reflecting at different angles from the objects. And this is the hot zone of the light source, so the light isn't shining in a rectangular way all through the scene. It's mostly focused on this area, and it starts to decay all around it. For the values, all these objects are at base value of 5, so wherever the surface is facing the light will go up to a value of 2, and whenever it's receding from the light it will be at 5 or 6. So let's paint the views first. On the front view, most of these objects will be in the light, with a variation of how much it's facing the light source. The cone will have a bit of a shadow since it's sitting a bit over the edge. To make sure I get it right, I check the other views for it. There's another cast shadow from the geosphere on the hexagon cylinder behind it. Since this is a complicated scene, I need to know where the reflected light and the cast shadows on some of the object will be, and you can know all this by checking the other views as you paint. Same story for the top view. Anywhere facing the light will be lighter, then the light decay as it goes either way from it, or vertically down toward the ground. The cast shadow of the cone and the sphere on the object beneath them will follow the direction of the light. As for the floor, all these objects will cast their shadows on the opposite direction of the light as well. For the left side, the back of all these objects will be mainly in the shadow, except the parts facing the light like the geosphere right side. Now for the main painting, I start with the light values and the hot zone of the light source, lightening all the areas facing the right direction. Always keep an eye on the other views as you do the cast shadow, so you know where the cast shadow will be. You can also check the value chart you made earlier whenever you need a reminder. The geosphere casts a shadow on the front of the hexagon, while the sphere casts another shadow on the top side of the cylinder. The cast shadow of the hexagon and the sphere on top will merge into one blob along with the rest of the combined objects. The geosphere will have a tiny shadow in the front underneath it, since the polygon is a bit higher and deflecting the light above it. You will only see the same with a normal sphere since it's all smoothed out. Now I'm smoothing out the values on the sphere and the cone by using a soft brush. Okay, it's time to remove the outline and work on enhancing the edges. Light edges facing the light and dark ones in the ambient occlusion area. For the final step, I work on the overall read of the edges by manipulating the values of the background in comparison to the objects, lightening spaces in front of darker edges and darkening other in front of the light ones. And here it is all done. Let's do another light switch and see what we get. In this example we have a very tiny omni light in the center of the set. The intensity is very low and thus the light rays don't travel very far. The focus is the simple sphere around the light source hitting the few surfaces in its vicinity. The value chart will be highlighted in the middle of the surface around the light and decaying very fast away from it. So the scene will be in low key and most of the values will be toward the dark tones. In the front view we will see the lightened part of the cone, the hexagon and the edge of the sphere. A small part of the box will be lit and the geosphere will be in complete darkness except for a few midtones at the edges. When you finish painting a view, hide the light source just to see if your scene still conveys the same position of the light without it. It needs to read as if the light isn't there, just its effect around the scene. In the top view, the light source is almost underneath the sphere, so we won't see much of its effect on the sphere since it's on top of it, except for the nearest edge. So I mainly paint the whole thing in dark tones and extract just few faces around the light source. As for the ground, the light will be shining as a sphere, but dimming very fast as it moves away from it. All the objects in the scene will have an elongated shadow, since the light will hit both sides of these objects in two different directions, so you're gonna end up with a tiny light waves in between the objects. It looks very cool and dramatic. The cast shadow of the geosphere is a bit tricky. I had to look at the front view again. The light doesn't hit the ground in the bottom due to the one side of the geosphere blocking it. So it looks like it's a bit cut off before it continues above the geosphere edge. In the left view, the light source is behind the hexagon cylinder, so most of the sides here are in complete shadow, except for the right side of the cone overlooking the light source. Okay, now to the main perspective. The cone is almost half in the light tones, since it's overlooking the light source as we said. The rectangular box underneath it, it will see some of the light on the top and in a lesser degree on the left side. The rest will be in the shadows. The geosphere will see the light on the top surfaces and the rest will be in different tones of shadows, depending on what gets reflected back onto them from the other objects. The hexagon cylinder will have one edge in the light, with the cast shadow of the geosphere hitting the bottom of it and the rest is in shadows. Now the top part of the cylinder should be in the shadows since it's above the light source, but some of the reflected light from the sphere will shine down, illuminating the tip of the top surface with a little light on. The sphere of course will be mostly in shadows, except for the one side overlooking the light. For the ground, as we saw with the top view, the shadows will be expanding as they move away from the light, since the edges are getting hit in different directions around the center of the light. I keep checking all the views before I add the cast shadow to make sure I'm understanding the exact position of each of them. And here is the little light way between the geosphere and the cylinder. The bottom is blocked out by the geosphere edge, but above it, the light will shine a little bit between the geosphere and the normal sphere. The light I added in between is about a value of 6, but it looks light due to the black cast shadow around it. The more I darken the background, the more contrasted the light in the center will be. It's time to remove the outline and paint in the edges as before. Here is where you take an artistic license while painting these edges. Even if it's not 100% physically accurate, exaggerating them to make them look nice is completely okay. You can also do a grunge and wear and tear on the surface as you go. They don't need to look 100% plastic with no dents or wobbly edges. Paint it like an artist instead of an engineer, and happy accidents may happen. Finally, I'm going around the painting and enhancing the read of the edges, making contrasted environment around the edges in relation with the background. And here is the final version. This is what most of the old master artists used to make their paintings interesting. One small light source and a lot of drama around the painting. You can almost sense that the canvas has its own light source in it. I'm really obsessed with this style, it just looks so good. Alright, time to move on to the next one with different light source and basic values. In this example, we have a gray cone, a gray geosphere, a black sphere, a white hexagon cylinder, and a white rectangular box. The light source is from the top, shining a rectangular light underneath it. The examples are taking longer and longer to finish now, since there are so much to think about. We went from 15 minutes in the first set to 20 minutes in the second to 30 minutes in these examples. So do slow down as the examples get more complicated and you won't make as many mistakes. Okay, here we are going to have 3 value sets: light, mid-tone, and dark. The light is going straight down here, lighting all the top side of the objects and darkening the bottom of them. There is also light decay, so even the last side of the cone will get darker as they go down. In the front view, we first add the basic value for the objects: dark sphere, gray geosphere and cone, and light box and cylinder. Now we can add the highlights and the shadows on each of them based on their basic values. There will be cast shadow from the cone on the box and from the sphere on the cylinder due to the position of the light source. In the top view, we start the same way, adding the base value first, but here I just wanted to separate the objects from the background first to be able to paint them without bleeding into the background. After I do that, I can add the basic values for each and then the values on top. Here most of what we see will be in the light, since the light is from the top. So this will be the lightest value on each of them. As for the ground, everything in the rectangular zone of the light will be lightened and there won't be any visible shadow. For the left side, it will be the same as the front side, with the light tones being on top and the darkened one on the bottom. Now for the main painting, let's start first by adding the basic values. We can then add the dark tones and the highlights to each part of the objects based on its basic values. The sphere will cast a blurry shadow due to the size of the light source. As we said, the larger light sources with the small intensity will cast a blurry shadow. Small sized light sources with high intensity like the sun will cast sharp shadows. Also notice how the sides of the cylinder go darker as they move down due to the decay of light. The geosphere top surface will be in the light midtones, while the bottom will be in the dark, except where the floor reflects some of the light back onto it. The cone will cast longer shadow on the box underneath it, while the box will be hit by the light from the top. The cone will be in light midtones from the top and decay as it goes down to the base. Finally, the background will be lit inside the hot zone rectangle, while the rest will be fading into the dark tones. Cast shadows will be mostly blurry here and underneath the objects, except for the geosphere and the sphere, where they will cast a shadow underneath them that can be seen a little bit more. Also now it's time to remove the outline and paint the edges. Final part will be, as always, enhancing the read of all the edges around and separating the focus point of the painting from the background. And it's done. Let's now do the final variation on this set by adding two light sources. We have done a similar light setting like this before. We have a prime light from the top right and a rim secondary light from the left. So the values will be lighter from the right with a bit more of a shine from the left, moving the darkest tones to the middle back for all the objects. In the front view we have a light tone hitting the cone in an absolute middle part, where it will start being in the shadows, since the light source is in the exact middle of the set. Anything facing the light angle will be in the lightest, and the rest will be in the shadows. You can make it easier for you to just start adding the light from one source while turning off the other completely. After you finish all the values from the light source, you can turn on the other light and add its effect on the current values. It's a much better way to simplify the complexity of adding two light sources in the same time. In the top side we have half the cone, the sphere, and the geosphere lit by the right light, while the box top is in the light but the top of the cylinder in the dark, due to the cast shadow of the sphere. After we finish the values from the primary light, we can now add the effect of the faint light from the left. As for the background, all these objects will cast a left direction shadow on the ground due to the position of the light source. There will be a small hint of an angle for the tip of the box and the geosphere, since the light source is a spot, not a rectangle. So the light will start diverting on the edges a little bit. The cast shadow won't be as dark on the left side since it will be hit by another dimmer light source. From the left side, we see the rim light effect on the back of these objects. The closer they are to the light source, the brighter mid-tone they will be. For example, the cylinder will be lighter than the box since it's closer to the secondary light, but overall, they will all be in the shadows. Okay, for the main perspective, you can start adding the effect of the primary light first, then worry about the other light afterward. The cone will cast a smaller shadow than the one before, because the light here is not on the exact top, but on an angle. The cone also casts a shadow on the top box face going to the left. The sphere will cast a shadow on the top side and a little bit on the right side as well. Now that we have the values done for the primary light, we can start adding the effect of the secondary light as a faint rim light on the left side. We move on to the ground and add a cast shadow for all these objects as we saw in the top view. Let's remove the outline now and add the highlights and the ambient occlusion edges. The final step will be separating some of the objects from the background and sharpening up the scene a little bit more by adding some contrast. And this is it, all done. And here are all the 4 examples for the third set side by side. Okay, we have done so many basic shapes. How about we start moving on to the more organic shapes, like for example, a vase. We will see more of them in the second exercise video titled Complicated Basic Shapes. But this is just like a transitional step between the basic shapes and the complex shapes to help you practice both worlds before moving on to all complex shapes. Here we have a vase on a box, a cylinder, and a cone. The light source is from the top middle left, from the foreground shining on the set. It's a small rectangular light with a high intensity and sharp shadows. So let's see the surface number of the set. We already know how the surface number of the box, cylinder, and the cone will look like, but what about the vase? We're gonna think of it as a collection of basic shapes as well. The vase is simply an elongated sphere from the middle to the bottom, or a spherical cylinder if you want. The top part is a tapered cylinder with a hole in it. The tricky part will be the connection between the two shapes, which will have a bit of a sharp edge that will collect the lightest highlight if the light is from the top. Here are the light rays and their placement on the set, resulting in this value chart. Light will decay on most of the long surfaces, like the box, the cylinder, and the cone. As for the vase, the light will decay as if it's a sphere as you go down. As for the vase hole, it will get darker as you move inside of it. In the front view, we're gonna have lightened surfaces on the top left side of the object and shadows on the other side. For the vase, we have the lightened top part of the spherical body and lower tone on the top part due to its position from the light source. In the top view, we follow the light position and lighten these parts up. The vase will cast a shadow on the box underneath it and even darker shadows inside of it. All of the objects cast shadow on the ground. The shadow is shorter in size due to how high the light source is. On the left side, we have the same logic here. Surfaces toward the light get lighter, away from the light get darker. Now for the main attraction, we first paint the basic values for all of them. Let's make this lighter than a mid-tone, maybe around 4, so the highlights can go all the way to 1. We add the highlights on the vase on different positions. The top lip of the vase will catch even more highlight, while the bottom of the top part will be in mid-tones. The main body of the vase will act like a sphere and will catch the light in the middle left and go darker as it goes down toward the base. It will also cast a spherical shadow on top of the box and get hit by the reflected light from the box back into the far side of the vase. As for the box, cone, and the cylinder, we have done many of those before, so you shouldn't have any problem painting them. Light value where the light hit, darker shadows where it doesn't. We also have the cast shadows on the floor and reflected light back into the far side of the object. As for the floor, the light shines in the front side and will be blocked behind the objects. The cone will cast a shadow on the floor and all the way to the bottom of the cylinder. While the cylinder will cast a shadow on the floor all the way toward the back wall. The box's cast shadow won't be visible behind the set itself. Now we remove the outline and start sharpening the edges. Remember, those are lighter objects than before, so don't go very heavy on the shadows here. Maybe 5 or 6 for the object shadow and 8 to 9 for the ground shadows. The vase connection area between the top and the bottom will catch the highlight as we mentioned before, due to it to being a groove connecting the two parts. To lighten up more without adding pure white, you can darken the bottom part of the top piece to make the lightened edges even more lighter. The ring around the top will catch the light as well, since it has a curved surface instead of a flat one. Finally, I darken the background behind the objects to make them read a little bit better and to separate them from the background. I do the same thing in between the objects themselves so they don't merge together. And this is it for the first option of the fourth set. Things starting to look interesting, don't they? So let's add two exact light sources from both sides and see what happens. This time it's not a primary light and a rim light, these two lights are exactly the same. Same intensity, same size, same position, but in the opposite direction. This will give us some interesting values in between, so let's do it and see how it goes. Alright, here is our surface normal as usual. and here are the light hitting them from both sides in the exact same direction. The value shot resulting in it is a bright light on the left side and a darkened middle. Now the objects closer to the right light will be lit with a high value from the right and a lesser degree from the left. It won't be equal on both sides on the same object, since the cylinder, for example, is closer to the right light source than it is to the left one. But the box, on the other hand, will be lighter from the left than it is from the right, while the cone, which is almost in the middle, will be lit equally from both sides. The top sides of the objects will be the darkest, since both light sources are below them. A simple object like the cone will have a simple line of shadow in between the two lights. It won't be a dark shadow because there are two light sources in the scene. But for something like the vase, the shadow will be on a curved surface, so it will be curved from both sides. You see it here lit more from the bottom than from the top, because the light source's position being low, so the shadow of it follows that position as well. As for the cast shadow, the objects closer to the right will cast more of a faint shadow to the left, and the objects to the left will cast a bit of a faint shadow to the right. As for the cone, it will cast a blurry, faint shadow on both sides that is barely visible. Alright, enough talking and let's start painting. The front side is very easy. I'm lighting up the closest side to the light sources from both sides and narrow the shadow in the areas between them. Keep in mind that the vase will cast a shadow on the right cylinder and the cylinder will cast a shadow on the vase in return, and on the box as well. The cone is simply what the scene is all about, dark middle and light from both sides. Here I'm consulting the top view to know where the light hit the cylinder in between the cone, the box, and the vase. It's a narrow hole in between the three objects. That's why it's important to understand the scene in all views, so you can do the values right. Doesn't mean you have to do all the views for every scene you want to paint, but at least do a quick sketch or a thumbnail so you can imagine it a bit better. You can see on the vase that the left side is closer to the left light source. So it's more lit from the left than it is from the right. It's not a big difference, but maybe a value or a half a value in between the two sides. For the top view, things are a bit simpler. Everything is lit on the sides, and everything from the top is darker. The vase casts a shadow on both sides, but the left cast shadow is removed due to the closeness to the light source. The inside of the vase is very dark, since there is no light coming in at all. The cone is lit from both sides, leaving a small strip on the middle for the mid-tone shadow. The cylinder top is dark since it's above the light source. And finally, the floor is lit from both sides with blurry cast shadow for all around the objects. In the left view, we can see everything lit up by the light from our side, hitting directly all the objects. The only thing to notice here is the cylinder side, which is a bit further ahead, not as bright as the other objects. The same thing is for the far edges of each object. As for the main scene, I decided to finish one light at a time so I don't get confused in between. So I'm gonna paint the values of the left side light first, while hiding the other one on the right. This way I build up the values bit by bit. So with one light source I can start brightening up the left side of the objects depending on their position of the light source. The closer they are, the higher the value will be. See, I'm even using dark values as if there is no other light source on the other side. I will worry about the other side when I'm done with this one first. Now I'm adding the cast shadow and the little light on the cylinder that we saw before. All this while consulting all the views to make sure I get it right. Now that I'm done with the left side, I re-add the right light and start adding the values on top of the old ones, lighting up the right sides and leaving the middle part in a lighter shadow than before. Here I'm looking at the top view again to know where the cylinder will cast a shadow on the right side of the box. See, the cylinder as we see it in the top view casts a bit of a shadow on the other half of the side of the box, but there will be a lit part near the left corner. You can only tell by looking at the top view. Here's another situation. The cylinder also blocks the light from the right source to reach the bottom of the vase, but the light does hit the vase above the cylinder as it expands toward the left. Now you may ask, how come the top of the cylinder isn't lit while the vase, which is higher, gets lit by the same light source? Well, the vase isn't a flat surface. The surface normal of the vase on the right side do catch the light on a direct angle, while the cylinder's flat top won't catch any of the light at all, being at 90 degrees with the light source. So here we have the cylinder blocking some of the light from the vase and adding this triangular shadow in between the two sides. Now, why is the shadow darker on top than on bottom? Well, the vase is slimmer in the bottom, catching more of the light as it goes down, while the top is facing the ceiling that is not catching any of the light at all. There is also reflected light from the box toward the bottom of the vase, adding more to the high values. As for the vase top, it will catch the light from both sides since it's tapering down facing the light source as well. Now for the background, all cast shadows as we said will be blurry since the light source is fading most of it on both sides. But the middle part of the wall behind and the ground will be the darkest, adding some beautiful contrast in the edges in between. It's also time to remove the outline, so let's zoom in and start enhancing our edges. Now I'm adding the final touches and enhancing the read of the edges in between the objects and the background, and even between the objects themselves. And there it is, 30 minutes and it's done. Very interesting and a bit harder exercise than before. Lots of thinking and puzzle solving involved. Keep your eyes on the other views so you don't make so many mistakes. Okay, let's move on to the third option of the fourth set, where I completely go overboard with the light source. The objects are still in the lighter tone, not different than before, but the light is fixed on the background wall, emitting a rim light all over the scene. The whole scene will be dark, except the edges of all objects, adding some drama and mystery around the scene. So here are our surface normal, and here is the light rays emitting from the wall and lighting up the edges of the objects. The only direct hit will be at the top of the box, and a little bit on the side of it. If you look at the left view, you will see that the light is shorter than the vase, the cylinder, and the top of the cone. Only the box will be shorter enough to catch the light. The values will be mostly in shadows from this view except for the sides, catching bit of highlights from the rim light, and of course the top of the box. So let's start with the front view. Here we can only see the dark side of the objects except for the rim light effect on the sides. The same thing can be said about the top view, except we can see the bright side of the cone and the top side of the box. The floor will have the bright light cascading from the wall toward the scene, but blocked by the objects on its way out. Now the shadows aren't straightforward because the light source is too big. It's hitting each object from two sides. So it narrows the shadow from both sides toward a point in the foreground. Remember, if the light source is bigger than the object, it will narrow the shadow down to a point. If the light source is smaller than the object, it will expand the shadow outward like we saw in few examples before. Now the shadow isn't completely gone from the other side of the objects, but it's much lighter than the pure cast shadow. So here we have the lightened ground, the narrow cast shadow, and the semi-cast shadow in between. On the left side we can see the bright area of the objects facing the light source, and they begin as bright as possible, then decay as they move forward. While I'm painting the left side, I noticed that the cone isn't completely lit all the way to the bottom due to the box and the cylinder blocking some of the light. So I had to go back and correct the light in the top view before coming back to the left side. I can't stress enough how important it is to know your scene from all sides. I wouldn't have caught that mistake if I didn't paint it from a different view. Now for the main scene, let's just right away darken the whole thing, because it's all in the dark anyway. It will make it easier to extract the few light areas from the overall darkness. Now I'm just adding more shadows to the absolute dark areas in the middle of the backside. Even though the sides of the objects don't get a direct hit from the light, they will still reflect some of the light going through around the side of the scene. The box side will have a small opening that the light can get through. If you look at the top view, you can see how that happens. The rest of the objects will have the rim light effect on the sides as we said. The top of the box is completely exposed to the light source, except the area behind the vase, and the cast shadow won't be straight backward as we saw in the top view. It will be more concentrated in the middle of the backside with blurry edges from both sides. Now let's add the light effect on the background and extract the cast shadow out of it like we did with the top view. Here it's even more clear how the sides of the light keep emitting light all the way to the back. Now why is there a middle cast shadow area in between the light and the shadows? See, the light is too big that it hits the object from both sides, acting like two light sources, one from the left and one from the right. The effect gives two cast shadows as we demonstrated back in lesson 1. If you have two lights, you will get two shadows, and the same story here. Okay, it's time to remove the outline and add the enhanced version of the painted edges. Things are a bit tricky here with the overwhelming light source, so I keep unhiding the outline layer to know where exactly is the outline. Now all is left is going over the painting in total and making sure the objects read well even from distance, by adding some contrast in between the objects and the surrounding background. And it's done. Very interesting scene this one. But for now we can do one last option for this unique set while changing the basic values of the objects themselves. In this example we have a black box, a grey cylinder, and a white vase and cone. The light is set to be a spotlight from both sides but from the top, The spotlight on the right is a higher intensity than the one on the left, leaving the left light source as a faint rim light and the one on the right as a prime light. So here are the surface normal as usual, and these are the light rays from both light sources. The primary light hitting the right side and the faint rim light from the left. The value chart is a bit complicated but not too much. Simply put, the surfaces facing the primary light will be brighter and the other side will be in shadows except the slightly lighter shadow due to the secondary light. We saw something like that before, so it shouldn't be a problem. Let's start with the front view. First I will add the basic values for each object, then I will paint the primary light first, then add the secondary light source afterward. Same steps for the top view, basic values, primary light, then secondary light. As for the cast shadow, the cylinder will cast a shadow over the box. The base will do the same. And for the other light source, it's too weak to cast a shadow from the other side due to the intensity of the primary light. Now the primary light is high up, so the shadows will be shorter than the example we saw before. Also, the shadows won't be as dark from the left side due to the effect of the secondary light. From the left, we see the effect of the rim light on the objects. So we start with the basic values and then add the secondary light. Okay, for the main scene, we can start with the basic values as well. Then we add the light values while leaving the darkest values in the middle and to the back of the objects. For the vase opening, the value will be reversed. The lightest value will be facing the light from the left, and the darkest will be the one hidden behind the lid on the right. For the ground, we have it like we saw in the top view. Blurry cast shadow as we go toward the left side. Now we remove the outline and work on the edges. Finally adding the contrast to the scene and enhancing the overall look. And it's done. And here are all the 4 variations of light for the set side by side. Now we move on to the last set example of the first part of the exercise video for lesson 2, the basic shapes video. And this final set is the last level of the basic shapes. They are complicated, multifaceted, and have different angles and positions. Here we have a pyramid on the left, we have another pyramid on the right, but with multi-polygon on each side, turning it into a geopyramid. We have a geosphere in the back with a normal sphere on top of it. And finally a cylinder with a slanted top facing the right. All gathered in a circle in a very complicated way. And we have 4 different options for this set as well. Here is where we go from 15-minute painting in set 1 to 20 to 25 to 30 and finally to 40-minute video per option. So the more complicated it is, the more value puzzles you need to solve. Again, slow down and enjoy the process. In the first light option, we have the light from the bottom left corner. This is the first time we use this light position. It's a small rectangular light source from the bottom corner in the foreground hitting the set in the center. So let's first look at the new surface normal for this set. Every surface going in every and each way. Okay, let's see the light rays. Very direct from the light source toward the center of the set. The value chart shows the closest objects like the cylinder and the pyramid on the left will be the most hit with the light, but then the light decays as it goes around them to the other object. There is also many cast shadows going on from the cylinder toward both the geopyramid and the geosphere, and from the normal pyramid toward the sphere on the top. So with that said, let's start painting the front view. Here we see the bright areas facing the light source, like the left pyramid side, the center of the sphere, the middle polygon of the right geopyramid, and the middle of the cylinder. There is also a little light hitting the top of the geosphere as well. I always use the top view to see where the cast shadow is from one object to another. And here the cylinder casts a shadow as we said on the objects in the back, and the same for the left pyramid on the sphere. For the top view things are a bit clearer, because you can see an overview for the whole scene. We can see the position of the light to the left, so everything facing that side will be lit. Here is also where you understand where the cast shadow will be. The pyramid on the left is not straight. The top of the pyramid is moved to the right, so not exactly your typical pyramid. As for the pyramid on the right, it might look a bit confusing, but it's also a normal pyramid with faceted sides, with the top point moving to the left toward the cylinder. The light on the ground is blocked by the objects themselves, and the light is spread from the right to the left, and the shadows will replicate the same direction. On the left side we can see the right side of the objects in light values, and the one behind are in darker values, like the geosphere, with a bit of reflected light near the wall. Okay, for the scene itself, we just gather the data we had in the previous views and apply it to the perspective. Most of the value puzzle pieces are solved in the other views, so the only thing left is to paint them. The top of the cylinder is in the shadows, since it's pointing away from the light source and being above it as well. The right pyramid have a geopolygon side, so every one of them will have a different value. The one in the center is pointing toward the light, while the one on the bottom is toward the floor, and as for the one on the top, is pointing toward the ceiling. And here is the cast shadow for the cylinder. The geosphere has one side that catches a bit of the light on the top left corner. As for the sphere, the light isn't in the exact center of it, it's more toward the lower left pointing at the light source, and there is a cast shadow on it from the left pyramid. The left pyramid left side is in the light, but the right side catches a bit of the light in a steep angle, but it starts going darker as it goes beyond the light reach. Also, some of the dark values of the cylinder top reflect back on it. Now the cast shadow of the whole thing is behind the objects to the opposite side of the light. Since we have smooth object here, let's switch to the smooth brush and make our values look a bit better. It's time to remove the outline, so we'll zoom in a little bit and work on the edges while hiding and unhiding the outline layer. After I'm done with the outline, let's add some contrast here and there and make the background work for us by enhancing the read of our objects. And here is the final painting. Very complicated and very interesting to do. Now let's move the light to the right side and see what happens. So on this option, the light is from the top right mid-ground, shining on the right side of the objects. Here are the surface normal, the light rays, and the value chart. Very straightforward, every surface point to a different direction, getting a different value. In the front view, we have the right side of the geopyramid in the light. The top of the cylinder this time is facing the light directly, but we have a cast shadow from the geopyramid on top of it. The sphere is lit from the right side, and so is the geosphere underneath it. Finally, the pyramid on the left have a bit of a shine on the right side and shadows on the left side. There is a cast shadow from the cylinder on the bottom part of the left pyramid. I have to admit, the geopyramid is a bit confusing from the top side, but the triangular side is not just one side in the bottom, it's many sides. Just know that the tip of it is near the cylinder and the other 3 points are the base of it. Here we also see the cast shadow of the sphere on top of the geosphere and the geopyramid on top of the cylinder. The other pyramid sides we are seeing here are both in the shadows, because these are the other two sides of the pyramid that aren't hit by the light. These are the left and the back side of the pyramid. As for the ground, the cast shadow is simply to the left side of the objects with a bit of an angle due to the size of the light source. It doesn't go all the way to the edges, so there is a bit of a conversion happening here. As for the left side, we see most of the dark sides of all the objects. For the main scene, I start with all the light areas first, and then move to the dark side afterward. We do the same for the ground. We add the light first and then subtract the cast shadow from it. Here I just saw that the far side of the geopyramid is not high enough to cast a shadow in front of the geosphere. So there is a bit of a light happening behind it. But it's not showing too much in this angle, so it's not a big deal. Now we remove the outline and work on the edges, adding highlights where needed and ambient occlusion in the dark places. I'm using the selection tool this time to make even sharper edges. It's a quicker tool to use, especially with straight shapes, to get a better result faster. On the other hand, I use the smooth brush to clean up the values on the sphere and the cylinder. The pyramid on the left is almost blending in with the background, so I can separate it by adding contrast or leave it as a lost edge to let the viewer focus more on the bright side of the canvas. Adding or removing lost edges is completely up to the artist and where he or she wants the focus point of the painting to be at. And it's done, looking clean and sharp. Okay, let's move on to the next option. Here we go back to the Omni Light option. I wanted this to look like a statue or a monument in a video game, where the light is emitting from the middle of this weird set, near the tips of the pyramids. I thought it would be interesting to see how that would look like. Here is the light source in between all of the objects. The light is small, but it has more intensity than it was in the last example. So here is the surface normal, the light rays, and finally the value shard. The values will be the brightest around the sphere of the light source, and what you see in the dotted line are the expanded cast shadow for each of the objects. Remember what I said about the size of the light source. The bigger the light source, the narrower the shadow will be, and the smaller it is, the bigger the shadow will be. So with that said, let's paint the front view. Here we can see the sphere being hit with the most light, then the tips of the pyramids and the top of the cylinder, also the top of the geosphere. On the back, we can see the big shadow casted from the small sphere, then the edge of the light source and where it decays toward the darkness. On the top view, we see every object being lit from the closest side to the light source and going dark as it goes away from it. The top side of the pyramid is facing some of the light source, so it will be bright, while the other pyramid on the left side will have some of the faint light on top of its sides. The cylinder top is completely lit since it's below the light source. As for the ground, the light will shine through the objects like the light bomb, going each and everywhere in between the objects, while casting huge shadows behind them. I love these top views. The light can look very real, the way it affects the background. On the left side we can see the light in the middle of the set, shining everything around it. But we only see the effect of the light hitting the sphere and the far away pyramid. Okay, for the main scene, let's start adding the light values around the light source. The side of the cylinder and the back of the pyramid are completely in the shadow, except for a faint light on the edge of the cylinder. Even on the top of it, the light decays as it moves away from the light source. The geosphere front side gets hit with the same amount of light from the middle. The pyramid on the left is shiny on the top as it's closer to the light source and decays as it goes down, while the side of it is completely in the dark. Let's now do the background. Here is the light hitting the sphere on different direction, expanding the size of it in the shadow on the back wall, and it will do the same for the rest of the objects. The minute I added the shadow of the object to the background, the scene suddenly turned dramatic with some mysterious undertone of a temple-like situation, like this being an ornament or a statue of magic in a village somewhere. Okay, we are done with the values. Let's remove the outline and paint better edges in this place. Now let's add final touches and contrast all around it and finish it up. And here it is, it looks great. Now let's move on to the final option of the final set of this video. Let's add new lights and shade the basic value of these shapes. Here we have two light sources, one rectangular primary source on the right and the same one but with less intensity on the left. The basic values of the object are a black sphere, a gray cylinder, and a geosphere and white pyramids. Here are the light rays from both lights. More intense light on the right than the rim light on the left. And here is the light chart for the whole thing. The cast shadow will be from the right to the left, with faded edges as it needs the light source on the left. Okay, in the front view we will see the lightest area on the right, and a faint light on the left with the main shadows being in the middle and to the back. On the top view, the same story. We start with the basic values and then add the effect of the lights on them. As for the ground, the cast shadow will be on the left, but fades out as it gets closer to the other light source. Also, there is a cast shadow from the pyramid on top of the cylinder. For the left side, here we see the effect of the rim light on the back side of the objects. Even as a faint light, it still have more effect on the objects as they get closer to it. On to the main painting. Here you can see the lightest part of the pyramid are at the close edge, but the other one is pointing away from the light, so it's around the value darker. On the back side, it goes down with every polygon painting away from the light. The sphere is black sphere, with a faint bright spot in a 7 value pointing at the light source. The geosphere underneath it will have the right side in bright midtones value. The cylinder is also grey, so it will have bright midtones in the light except the cast shadow from the pyramid. The left pyramid will have a shiny top and a cast shadow on the bottom, from both the geosphere and the cylinder. The other side of it will have a high midtone value due to the other light source. Now we can add some values to the background. Let's now remove the outline and start working on the edges. The final step will be adding more contrast around and enhancing the read of all objects. And it's done. And here are the 4 options for this set. And here are all 20 examples for the first video of the 5 parts for lesson 2 side by side. This was very educational session for me, to be honest. Almost 10 hours in total. 10 hours painting values and solving light puzzles. I already feel like I increased my experience in dealing with light and values by doing these exercises. It's also the longest I have talked over the video, almost 30 pages of voiceover for this video. About 2.5 hours. I didn't edit the video as I'm talking about it just yet, but 10 hours video will be quite a lot to edit. So I may have to increase the speed at least 5 times to make it around 2.5 hour video. But it might get a bit longer, to be honest. I will also leave a PDF link in the description box for this video for all 20 examples without values painting on it. That's for you to do on your own after you watch this video. You can also make your own examples either by finding some basic shapes online or setting your own in your studio. If you find them online, you will end up just copying them, but if you do try to change the light after you do copy the first option, it will help you a lot in dealing with values. Just move the light in your mind or draw it on your canvas and start solving the light puzzles yourself. This is a must-do exercise if you want to get any better at lighting and painting values. Trust me, you won't be just painting values on basic shapes all the time, and neither would I. So this is just the first part, and the complexity will go up with every video all the way to complicated fabrics, toys, objects, and finally organic shapes like full characters. It all starts with the same principles. Everything can be turned into a basic shape. An arm is a basic shape with the fancy details, so it can all be simplified. That's why it's so important to do these examples here before things get complicated. With that said, this is the end of this long video. The book of fundamentals is probably as big as both of the two other books combined, and it's gonna take a while to finish. But instead of going back to book 1 and 2, I need to finish at least one lesson in the second book fully before I go to the others. Even if the lesson is 9 videos long, I have to finish it. So next I will work on the second part of the lecture video, and then the second part of the exercise video, and so on till I'm done. So we won't do any outro here. But in general, if you like to support me, please do, and thank you for that. And don't forget to subscribe and like and the rest of it. I can barely speak after 2.5 hours of voiceover. I'm starting to lose my voice, so let's just end it here. And I will see you in part 2 of the lecture video next. And after that, we will go back to part 2 of the exercise video until we finish hopefully lesson 2. So see you then, and have a nice day.